In this video, we're going to talk about how to use Google Slides to create your identity self-portrait. To get started, we're going to go up here to the waffle, click it, and find the icon for Slides. After I click that, I need to start a new presentation. I'm going to come up here to the left corner and click the plus. That should open a new presentation. Now, automatically, I'm going to see that I have some choices for themes here on the right side. But the theme doesn't really matter because we're going to end up completely covering this slide with images, so we won't be able to see the color of the background. I'm going to go ahead and leave mine as the default white and close out of themes. I'm also going to erase these text boxes for now. Even though I can use text in my artwork, and I probably will, I can add new text boxes at any time, and right now I want to focus on filling up my slides with the different images that I need for my artwork. So I'm going to select the text box, click backspace to delete it, and I'm going to do the same with the second text box. I'm also going to use this time to go ahead and title my presentation. So coming up here to the corner where it says Untitled, I'm going to put in my last name, space, identity, self-portrait. And now I'm ready to start collecting images for my artwork. Now let's go ahead and take a look at some of the different ways we can get the images we need for our artwork today. I'm going to come up here to where it says Insert, click it, drop down to where it says Image, slide over, and take a look at some of these options. One of the options it gives me is to upload from my computer. Now, if you have personal photos on your phone or a device at home that you would like to use for this artwork, you can do that, but we're going to have to follow some steps. The main thing is that you need to get those images onto your school computer. The easiest way to do that from your phone or a personal device is to go to the browser, go to gmail.com, and log into your school email account through Gmail. You want to make sure you're not in your personal email or this method won't work. So once you're logged into your school email account on Gmail, you can compose a new email to yourself to your school email address and attach the photos you want to use. Then, from your school computer, you can open up your school email and download those images to your school computer, either to Google Drive or to your desktop. I've already emailed myself several photos and downloaded them to my computer, so I'm going to upload those now. I'm going to click the images that I want to include, and then click Open, and that should drop those all in there. Now you'll notice when you upload multiple photos at the same time, they're all linked. So if I click and drag to move these around, they're all moving together. I don't want them to be stuck together the whole time, so I'm going to go ahead and click into the background, and now I should be able to select each photo individually. I'm going to go ahead and take each of these photos, grab the corner, and drag to shrink them down in size, since I'm using this as just a place to store all the photos I need, and it's a lot easier to see them all at the same time if I make these images smaller. So let's take a look at the images I have so far and think about how those images represent different parts of my identity. Remember, we've talked about some of the different aspects of identity, including who has shaped us, our life experiences, our traits and characteristics, our hobbies and interests, our culture, and anything else that might be missing. When it comes to who has helped shape my life, we've got two examples here. One is my younger brother, who's been an important influence on my life, as well as my grandfather. To represent my physical traits and characteristics, I've included a photograph self-portrait. And to capture some of my life experiences, I've also included a photo of myself from childhood. Now, I already had a photo of myself saved to my computer, but I could also take a photo of myself now using slides.
This can be helpful if you want to take a self-portrait, if you have a special object that you would like to take a photo of, or photos of your friends. One reason you might want to use your computer to take a photo of yourself is if you're interested in doing any layering of images of people. I'm going to be layering the photo of myself that is current with the photo of myself from childhood. You'll notice that my face is facing the same direction and it's the same angle. This will be really helpful when I get to that step later. But if the only photo I had of myself, I was facing a different direction, using my computer's camera would be one way to help me take a photo where my head is facing the same direction. If I want to use my computer's camera, I'm going to go to Insert, slide down to Image, over to the side, and click on Camera. Now I should be able to see myself. If you haven't used your camera before, your computer might prompt you and ask if you want to allow access to your camera. You need to click yes for this to work. Now, once you have your camera ready, you can decide how you want to take your photo. You can decide if you want to take it straight on, looking slightly to the side, or all the way in profile. All of that is up to you. You can decide if you want to be smiling or serious or silly. Once you have a position you like, you're going to come down to the camera button, strike your pose, and click it. You can also take several photos and then choose the one you like best. Once you have the one you want to use, you can click it and then click the button that says Insert. Now, since I already have a photo of myself, I'm not going to use this one, but that's how you use the camera.
Now, something that you'll notice about all the photos I have so far is that they're very literal. My grandfather is someone who's really important to me, so I have a literal photo of him. I now also want to expand my thinking to include how can I use symbols to represent some of these aspects of my identity. Another person that has shaped my life is my mom. Now, I could include a photo of my mom here, but since I'm now trying to think about more ways to include symbolism in my work, I want to think about what symbols I could use to represent her instead. Now, I can think of a lot of ways that I could represent my mom. I could do that with an object, like a picture of the bowl that she uses for mixing and creating all the different cookies and breads that she bakes for us. Or I could have a picture of a book because she's a really active reader and has always shared her love of reading with me. I could also represent her as a color or even as an animal. And that's what I think I'm going to do. My mom has always reminded me of a lioness. She's ferocious, she's protective, she's so strong, and she's an amazing provider for our family. But since I don't have any images of lions myself, I'm going to find one on the web. To do that, I'm going to go up to Insert again, drop down to Image, slide over, and go down to the magnifying glass where it says Search the Web. Over here, I'm going to type into the search bar, lioness, and I'm going to look through the photos to see if there's one that I want to use. I like this one of the lioness with the cub. I will click that, and then I'll get a little button that pops up down here where I can press Insert. And there's the photo. Now, just like with the other ones, I'm going to shrink it down to size so I can keep adding to my bank of photos. Now I want to focus a little bit more on culture. I'm going to think about my family culture and some of our traditions. We have a long tradition of quilting in my family, so that's an image that I would love to include here. So I'm going to do another search by going to Insert, Image, Search the Web. I'm going to erase my prior search, and I'm going to look for quilt photos. And once I find one that I like, I'll click it, Insert, and then again, shrink it down to size. Now I want to come back to thinking about traits and characteristics. I pointed out that I already used a photo of myself as a literal way of showing my physical traits and characteristics, but now I want to think a little bit more deeply. Is there something symbolic that I could use in images to represent the non-visible parts of me, the internal qualities, things that have to do with my personality and my emotions? One image that comes to mind for me is the ocean. I love how vast it is, and it reminds me of my emotional inner life. I love that it can be very calm and gentle, but it can also be rough and stormy. So now I want to find a picture of the ocean. Going through my same search, looking up ocean, seeing if there's anything I like. I think I want something more from above. I think I might look up ocean waves. Oh, I really like this image. It's got a lot of different shades of blue, and it's got some nice contrast between lighter and darker colors. I also want to keep in mind that it'll be really helpful for my artwork if I have a large background image to build on top of, and I think that this would make a really great background. Shrinking this image back down as well. Now I have a really nice collection of images. But remember, I can also use text as part of my artwork. And one aspect of my identity that I haven't really captured yet are my hobbies and interests. One writer who's had a really big influence in my life is William Shakespeare. When I was little, my grandfather used to read Shakespeare's sonnets to me. And then when I got older, one of the first plays I was ever in was a Shakespeare play, and is one of the reasons I fell in love with theater. To capture Shakespeare's influence on my identity, I'm going to include one of my favorite quotes by him. I'm going to come up here to the text box. I'm going to click and drag to create the shape of my text box, and then I'm going to type that quote. Though she be but little, she is fierce. Now, if I want to change what that text looks like, I can highlight it, and then I can change the size. I'd like to make this a little bigger. I can also change the color, and I can change the font. I want to do something that's a little bit more handwritten, so I think I'll try this out. I like that font a lot better. I think I'll make it a little larger. Now I have a great collection of images and text that represent the different aspects of my identity. But this is not a work of art yet. This is what I've done to get myself organized to make my art. I've been doing a great job thinking about all the different parts of my identity, but now I have to start thinking like an artist. This slide is going to be where I keep all of my images and my text to keep it organized, but I'm actually going to add a new slide where I'm going to be creating my artwork. To add that new slide, I'm going to come up here to the corner and I'm going to click this plus, which will give me that new slide. Again, I'm going to click the text boxes and delete them, so I have a nice blank page. Now, to get started with my artwork, I need to think about what's going to make a great background. I'm going to come back to my original slide and take a look at the images I have and think about, would any of these make a great background for layering on top of? I still think the ocean waves will make the best background. I can copy and paste this image into the next slide, but I'm going to show you what I'm going to do instead. Going back to my artwork slide, I'm going to come here to the button that says background and click it, and then choose image. Now, if I want the background to be one of the personal photos that I emailed to myself and saved to my computer, I could go to upload and find those images. I would go to browse and select the image that I wanted as my background. But I actually want to use those ocean waves, so I'm going to find that again by going through Google Images. I'm going to look up ocean waves, and I'm going to find that image again. Click it, insert, and then hit done. Now this image is glued onto the slide and will act as my background. But I think I want to make my background a little bit more interesting by layering another image on top. So I'm going to come back to my image bank And I'm going to go ahead and select the image of the quilt, edit, copy, back to my artwork slide, edit, paste. Now that I've pasted the quilt photo onto the background, let's look at some different ways we can edit this image. First, I'm going to play with the size by dragging one of the corners to make it larger so I can really see everything I'm doing. I can also rotate this image by coming up to the little blue dot at the top here, clicking it, and dragging it to change the position. You'll notice that the numbers next to my mouse help me know the angle of the image. Something else we can do to edit the image if we only want to see part of it is we can crop it. To crop the image, we're going to double click it, and we should see a black frame pop up along the edge. If I want to crop, I'm going to find one of the little black markers, hover over it, click, and drag to where I want the edge of my image to be. Then, once I have cropping that I'm happy with, I'll go ahead and hit Enter on my keyboard. And now you can see I've got my cropped image. When I'm thinking like an artist, another thing that I want to keep in mind is what we call composition. Composition is how we use space in our artwork. It's where we choose to put things. I could leave this image of the quilt squares in the middle of my artwork, but I think it would be more interesting if I slid it all the way over to the side. Then I'm going to change the size until it lines up. And I think already that's a much more interesting artwork. Now let's take a closer look at some other options that we have for editing our image. I'm going to make sure I select the one that I want to edit, come up and click on Format Options, and now I'll see several choices over on the right-hand side. The most important ones are going to be Recolor and Adjustments. Let's take a look at Recolor first. I'm going to click the arrow so that it drops down, and underneath that, I'm going to click where it says No Recolor, and below that, I will see several options for how I could change the color in this image. I think it might be interesting to get the color of this image closer to the color of the ocean in the background. So I'm going to see what it looks like if I click on this. I love the way that the colors go together much more between the background and the quilt now, but I do think it's a little dark. I could try a different option for recolor, or I can come down to adjustments. I'm going to press the arrow again to close out recolor, come down to the arrow by adjustments, and these are the three that are going to really help me: brightness, contrast, and opacity. Let's start with brightness. If I click on this circle and slide it back and forth, you can see how it makes the image lighter or darker. I really want to make sure that I can see this image a little more clearly and that it matches some of the lighter colors in the background. So I'm going to slide it, I think, all the way up to there. Now, if I come down to contrast, when I increase the contrast, it makes the lights lighter and the darks darker. If I decrease the contrast and slide further down, it makes everything look more grayed out. I'm going to come back up and leave the contrast a little bit higher so it better matches the background. Now, one of the most important tools we'll be using to layer our images today is right here where it says opacity. If something is very opaque or the opacity is very high, it means we can't see through it. But if we lower the opacity, you will see that we can start to see through that image. It has less opacity. It's more translucent or see-through. Now that I'm happy with the adjustments I've made, I'm going to close that and close out of Format Options and take a look at my artwork as a whole. I think I've got a really nice start for the background, and I'm ready to continue layering on more images. Coming back to my image bank, I think I'm going to use my portrait next. I'm going to click it, edit, copy, back to my artwork, edit, paste. Now I'm going to go ahead and increase the size of this image so it's easier to see while I'm editing. Come up to format options, and I'm going to start using those tools of recolor and adjustments to start playing around with this image. Now, one technique that can be really interesting when you're using images of people is layering some of those images on top of each other. Because one of the photos I have in my collection is a photo of me as a child, I think it might be really interesting to see what it looks like if I layer that image on top of myself now. So I'll click it, edit, copy, back to my artwork, edit, paste. Now, one of the first things I'll do again is increase the size. I'm going to crop it so that I don't have a lot of extra image. And since I'm really focused on overlapping the faces, I'm going to crop it down to include just the face. Enter when I'm happy with the cropping. And then I'm going to go up to those format options, come to adjustments, and lower the opacity so it's easier to see through the image, so that when I move it around and layer it on top, it will be easier to see through to what's underneath. I think I still need to bring the opacity down a little bit. And I want to see if I can get those faces lined up. Now I think I've created a really cool effect by layering the younger version of myself on top of the older version of myself. And I can go back to my original slide and start copying and pasting in the rest of the images. Now, once I've completed my identity self-portrait and I'm happy with it, I'm going to click and drag the slide to the top so that my artwork comes first. So now, as you can see, I've completed my identity self-portrait. I've used both literal and symbolic images to capture the different aspects of my identity. I have the who has shaped me with my grandfather, younger brother, and my mom as symbolized by the lion. I have life experiences that I've captured with the image of my brother representing when I became a big sister, as well as my childhood photo. I've captured my physical traits and characteristics through this self-portrait, and I've expressed some of my internal traits and characteristics through the symbolic use of the ocean as my background. I've referenced my hobbies and interests by showing my passion for animals with the photo of my cat, as well as this quote from William Shakespeare, who has been an important influence in my life as a writer. And finally, I've shared a bit about my family traditions and culture through the use of quilting imagery on this side of my artwork. This artwork shares information about my identity, but it also shows how I'm thinking like an artist. I made decisions about the composition of my artwork by choosing to split it up into three main areas. And you can see that I've lined up some of these images so that they feel like they're a part of the quilt. Another choice that I made about composition was breaking up the text here at the bottom. I like the way that by spacing out the words, It moves your eye through the image, and it feels like it helps tell my story. Another artistic decision I made was about the color. I decided to make my artwork monochromatic. Monochromatic means one color. I'm working with different shades of the same color, and that helps me feel like the artwork goes together. But I also could have made the artistic decision to use different contrasting colors to create a different effect. The images that you choose to use in your artwork will help tell the story of your identity, but the way you put those images together is what expresses your artistic voice and tells us who you are as an artist.